Hello, this is Nicholas Briggs, and you're listening to the Sirens of Audio.
Daleks. I hate these guys.
Oh no, it is the Doctor! Scarpa! 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 Scarpa!
If you think you have seen the Doctor fight the Daleks, think again. This is the ultimate adventure.
I'm sending you mutated pepperpots straight back to hell!
More action, more excitement, more Daleks getting killed in very loud explosions.
I am the master of
Not on my watch, buddy.
And introducing Plenty O'Toole as Evelyn Hotlips Smythe.
Oh, Doctor. Now you have defeated the Daleks. Would you like to defeat me?
Don't mind if I do.
Daleks, the ultimate adventure. Coming to a cinema near you soon. Your supervisor will inform you of the cinema to which you have been assigned. Attendance is compulsory by order of the Historical Instruction Act. All praise the glorious English Empire.
G'day audiophiles, you are listening to the Sirens of Audio, the podcast dedicated to Doctor Who and the audio medium. My name is Dwayne and with me is Philip. G'day Philip.
G'day Dwayne, g'day everyone.
And joining us for this podcast is Ross Aitken from Gallfrey's Most Wanted and the Runcible Report. G'day Ross.
Good day. How are you all?
Yeah, doing really well. I've really been enjoying the Runcible Report. It's a very cool name for a podcast.
Thank you.
How'd you come up with that name?
Well, the original concept when I started to recruit Jeff to do it, because I wanted to go to weekly. We originally had planned Gallfrey to be more variety of stuff, but it just, me and Vic couldn't put the time to do it, and we couldn't do weekly. And with lockdown and me being home for surgery, stuck in the house for another couple of weeks, we did it. And we were originally going to do it like the Time War and cover the Time War like it was a news story. And then as we talked about it, and I went, well, reporter. And I just watched Deadly Assassin. And I went, oh crap, the Runcible Report. It sounds like those, what we get over here, public broadcasting, McNeil-Lair Report, the whatever report. It was, so we just went with it. And it worked. It was one of those ones I was like, okay, that sounds good. Because I think it was once I picked Runcible Report, and then I went Gallfrey Most Wanted presents the Runcible Report. I went, okay, we've got a name. So, but it was just trying to do news, and it's pretty much just going to be jumping around on topics. So we're looking. So
one thing I have noticed through listening to your podcast is how much of a Big Finish fan you are. You do a nice coverage of all. I don't know if you do books. Do you do books at all on your podcast?
We will start when we run out of Sylvester McCoy. He will be the New Adventures. That's how we're going to cover him. Because we didn't want to jump, because one, his Big Finish catalog is how do you put it in order? Yeah, and because we're going to do when we finish Trial of the Time Lord, we're going to do that as one big episode with all three of us. To knock it out, because we don't want to talk about it 4 times. We're going to do the 60 Evelyn. That's where we're going to go, because we do Paul McGann as a Big Finish already. So
yeah, no, very good. So with that in mind, I thought I'd ask you to come along and choose a couple of stories, and you've chosen one classic and another one that's not so well known. But we'll start off with the classic first, and that's Jubilee by Rob Sherman. Why did you choose Jubilee?
It's one of the first Big Finish I think really breaks the mold. because I mean, not to say they were simple bad, but I mean, I liked all the Big Finish up to that, but I like a daring choice. I was in theater for a long time, and I will like something that's like not 100% very good based on someone making a choice. That's a daring choice. And this one is really dark, and it is done very much in that 80s. It feels like an 80s Doctor Who story, but it is far darker and deeper, I think, in some ways than than you would have been allowed to in 1980s television to do. You could not have the companion starve to death, and the Doctor's legs amputated. But it's the performance are so good. It is, I can see it. I love an audio to where when I'm listening to it, I'm seeing the story unfold in my head. And this is one of the ones that really is stuck with me. Love Maggie Staples and Colin Baker's performances in it too. They are such a good double act that it has always been a soft spot in my heart. I mean, I've listened to this one more than I probably listened to any other.
That's good. I'll be able to get you to explain the second half to me. Philip, what was your opinion on Jubilee?
Jubilee would be one of my always go-to Big Finishes. In terms of it is a real classic. I think anything that Rob Sherman writes is amazing. So there's nothing he has written for Big Finish that isn't brilliant. And of course, this is what the first Dalek was modelled off. So when Doctor Who came back to the screen, Russell T wanted Rob to take this story and to turn it into an episode for him.
It's not really the same, though.
The episode Dalek is based on this script, and we'll probably talk a bit later about what he has put in. But this was what Russell T asked him to do, because Russell thought this was the perfect Doctor Who story, and I think Dalek actually is probably one of those shaped models as well. I think everything works. It is the most amazing cast. I mean, it's not a huge cast, but it is a brilliant cast. Maggie Staples I adore, and her and Colin Baker are just perfect together. I think the way it reviews history, Rob Sherman is making a very black, biting view of society about how we take things that are dreadful and awful and we turn them comic. And in part, I mean, he was taking the idea of the fact that we turn Nazis into jokes now, and even 20 years after the Second World War, Nazis were being used, and you've got sitcoms like Hello, Hello, and even Hogan's Heroes.
Oh God,
you just can't. Something so evil and awful as the Nazis become a joke, and so he has deliberately turned the Daleks that way and merchandise. So there's moments in here that I just laugh, and there's other bits that are just purely awful in terms of what he does. So totally entertaining, and I adore this story. It's brilliant.
Doctor Who, Jubilee.
You must get some rest, Miriam. It's a long day tomorrow.
Yes, a long, glorious day. A long, glorious, exciting, wonderful, marvelous...
Miriam, that is enough.
Doctor, I can't believe you just said that.
Oh, did I put my foot in it again?
What's that?
We can play with you gently or play with you until you break. You have no right to pride.
Well, the TARDIS doesn't seem to agree with you. She's trying to move again.
What's wrong?
Well, she can't. For some reason, she's stuck here.
Stay where you are, Evelyn Smythe.
Like it or not, you will be my ally.
Doctor, the doors. They can't decide whether to stay open or closed.
Get out, Evelyn!
Good friends, you and I.
You are my prisoner.
Sleep tight. Take care of the Daleks. Don't bite.
So my experience listening this time, had been a long time since I'd heard it. I always love everything Rob Sherman does. Is just a pleasure to listen to. But I did, when you press play on the app, we listen on the app now, you and I, Philip. But do you still listen to the CD, or you got the app now?
No,
Ross?
I can't. My wife would kill me. The guest room is basically my cave, and there's not enough room for that. No.
So
I have the first 70. I think I have the first 80 and a couple box sets, but everything's on the app now.
Cool. I did press fast forward when I heard the opening words to the play. It said "coming soon," and it sounded exactly like a Big Finish "coming soon" promo. And I thought, because I did remember that the older ones often had the trailers on at the start. And I thought, I didn't think they had them on at the start at Jubilee. It was a bit later than that, I thought, when Nick Briggs took over. But yeah, I pressed fast forward and then realised that I'd missed the story, part of the story, so I had to go back and listen to it again. This came out in 2003, right? So I think Rob Sherman at that time made a specific decision that was going to be his last script that he'd do for Big Finish. He's never done one since, and I wish he would. I wish he would come back.
Did he do the two Frobisher ones? I mean, I don't have all that in my head.
That was before Jubilee.
Yeah, but he did both of those, didn't he?
Yes, the Holy Terror and the Maltese Penguin.
Yeah, Maltese Penguin. I think I've got the hard copy of that. It's 33.5, I think. Instead of or is it 33 and a third?
Something like that. Yeah.
I can only describe Rob Sherman. I was trying to think, how can I sort of analogize him with other artists that I really like? And as far as TV and visual and movies go, Rob Sherman to me is like the Doctor Who equivalent of David Lynch. So he'll do something that's completely absurd, and you would think that it would be impossible to get away with that, but somehow it works. And David Lynch is the same, whether it's Twin Peaks or whether it's one of his movies. He does that too. Musically, I was for some reason I came across some Frank Zappa, and he's another one he's a musician who's completely absurd, does music you think shouldn't work, but somehow it does. If you're a fan of Frank Zappa, I'm sure there's people who aren't fans of David Lynch.
I feel that way about Tom Waits.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Tom Waits fan, and my friends will be listening to, especially later once he went to Ireland and the restraints were off. You're like, going, what instrument is it? But it's this weird, it shouldn't work, but it does. That weird voice of his. Yeah.
That's where you and I are going to disagree, because I've tried so hard to get into Tom Waits and I just can't do it.
I understand it. People, I go, if you want, he's a great songwriter. So listen to the people that have covered him, and that's about the closest I get some friends to, because I have to remind people, Vic turned me into a Springsteen fan. I hadn't been one, and I got turned into one, and I knew his Jersey Girl, but I prefer Waits. Okay. But I also prefer Waits' very early stuff, which is when he was writing for other people.
Yeah, as far as visual goes, for me, Rob Sherman would be equivalent to David Lynch in terms of the audio stuff that he's done. He hasn't done an awful lot. He's only done less than half a dozen, if you include Deadline, the Unbound story that he did, and if you include the BBV story that he did called Punchline. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's not.
I have that. That's him. I'll have to go. I have some of those because I was jonesing for Who, and I was buying some of those discs, and then Big Finish. The minute I heard, I subscribed. When it was still mail, I had to wait like 2 months.
Punchline, he doesn't use his own name. He uses the name Jeremy Ledbetter. So, but it is actually Rob Sherman. It's his first.
Okay, I might have to find that and give that a listen.
And after listening to everything, probably Deadline, even though it's got Derek Jacobi in it, and Jubilee would probably be my least favourite Rob Sherman scripts. And the main issue I have with Jubilee as a story is that it is incredibly listenable for the first 2 episodes, and then it kind of falls apart for me halfway through, and it goes all paradoxy, timey-wimey. Maybe I'm getting too old, Philip. I'm struggling a bit.
It's only the 4th episode that goes timey-wimey.
Yeah, as it's all cascading down to being the great reset button, which I normally hate. Yeah. I hate a story that I call it the Voyager reset, because I'm a big Star Trek fan, and in Voyager, they had a lot of time travel and stuff, but it was always reset by the end. And it's like, then why did I see this story? If it didn't happen, and there's no ramifications from the action of what happened, But yeah, it does get a little bit. I like this one because he plays it not camp, because American version of camp and English camp is different. American camp's like Batman TV show. Nonsense, silly. But there's a level of comedy with the leader and all that, and it gets darker and darker. That transition to where he's hiding all this darkness behind humor. And then their acting is the acting is, except for the Doctor and Evelyn, is almost panto. You know what I mean? Their delivery is not natural. It's a little big. And it shows the ramifications of what the Doctor does. That's one reason I like it, because he comes to places and turns the green. I say this in my podcast all the time. He turns a greengrocer into a soldier. And I get it from this, that the villain in this, his father was the right-hand man of the Doctor during the Dalek invasion. And he was a greengrocer who became a leader. And that the Doctor's not a pacifist in any way, shape, or form. A pacifist would not allow violence to happen, period. What he does is, I won't hurt anybody, but if you're going to save your world, I'll show you how to. And there would be ramifications from that. And I like it that in this story, it is set only in this story. Where in New Who, Davies hits that note a lot throughout his years, that the Doctor, and even in Moppets, creates soldiers to fight evil. And I liked it to show you that the Doctor does land, interfere, and what would happen if he did it wrong, or he picked the wrong people. So It was a neat little experiment, and then they reset it. But I just like there's just something about this one that hits all these notes that at the point I first heard it, I always wanted to see the ramification, see this in Who, the ramification of the Doctor's actions.
Yeah, because usually he just gets the TARDIS and disappears, and you don't see the results ever.
I know.
And
it's like, yeah.
The what happened next? There's a Blake 7 podcast, and one of the segments is what happened next, because the Blake 7 crew regularly just arrive at a planet, cause total uproar, cause rebellion, and then just disappear. And you think, well, what happens to all the people you've just left behind? And what's and I think Doctor Who often does the same thing. He comes in, causes total bedlam, and then just leaves. Often without even saying goodbye, and we don't know the damage is done. But I guess that's the happily ever after, isn't it? We all know that happily ever afters don't actually happen.
Oh,
but
I know.
We like to finish on the happily ever after and believe that's the end of the story. And so Doctor Who often is that fairy tale that it ends with a happily ever after. He goes off, and you just don't think about what happens next. But where this show shows the consequences of what can happen. But also the extreme of how evil people can be. And I guess that's what's so sad about the whole thing, in terms of how easily people can be corrupted. Certainly it's Rob Sherman's view. I think he's probably right, actually, and where you can go down a dark path very fast. And who's more evil, the Daleks or the humans?
Well, it's also how we write our history. We're seeing the Doctor did something in 1905, and then 2005, this was happened. And the main characters in this, this is how we view it. And they've turned the Doctor and Evelyn into Bond and Pussy Galore. But this is our history. How, and then hidden away is the truth in this room attached to the tower. These things the Doctor what Doctor does by saving people would have ramifications. And this is like the worst case scenario.
I thought it was interesting the way it finished, with the paradox not being fully sort of erased, because both the Doctor and Evelyn are going, I still remember what happened. So they've got two conflicting memories. And I think that was originally Rob Sherman's plan, to actually go back to that period again and revisit that era. But I don't think Big Finish were interested in that. So that was kind of left up in the air.
This was Nick Briggs the producer by now? Artistic producer? Or was it still Alan Barnes at this point? Or Gary Russell, I'm sorry, Gary Russell.
Gary Russell, yeah.
This would be a good one to go back and do. I mean, it's sad that Maggie Staples has passed, because it would have been a good one to go back to. I mean, the cast is great.
So in that sense, because that was Rob's intention, so in some ways the story seems a little bit unfinished. right at the end. But for me, it's that first half and it's the dialogue, because I'm not really a huge fan of the Daleks, and we're really getting bombarded with lots of Daleks.
I get Dalek burnout a great deal. They're not my monster.
Yeah. And that's what I like about this one, because it's a Dalek with a different motivation than the rest of the Daleks that turn up at the end. So,
well, it makes them scary. That's my problem with the Daleks. 5 out of 10 times, they're not scary.
Hmm.
You know, I have the same thing with the Cybermen. It's got to be the perfect storm. Because if you take out certain elements, and it's just a guy in a metal suit walking around talking in a staccato, you know, it's not scary. But this one I like because the Dalek is an important part of the story and not just there to be the villain.
Well, in fact, he's not the villain. The villain is actually the humans.
And I do prefer stories where the human is the villain.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely what's the thing of the character's name? I was going to say King Queen. The King Queen, that's president, isn't it? Nigel. That's right, Rochester. Miriam and Nigel.
Yeah,
they're definitely the villains, and there's all the political intrigue. I mean, the part of it is the fact that, and I said that the idea that some of this came for this TV show later, is that the Dalek, he's a prisoner. The Dalek's the one being tortured. And the mistake that Evelyn makes with the Dalek is she thinks that because the Dalek's suffering, therefore the Dalek's good. And of course, it doesn't actually change the Dalek's nature. The Dalek is still a Dalek. It's still always evil. It's just that the Dalek's suffering. And because of her humanity and her sympathy, she mistakes the Dalek for being better than it is just because it's suffering. And even though the true evil ones are Nigel, Rochester, and Miriam, they're the ones who are plotting an evil. They're the one doing the torturing, but the Dalek is still evil. But because of what it requires is what it's lost, which is orders. It's a soldier who needs commands.
Yeah.
And that's why the whole thing gets caught up and gets confusing in terms of further on. The one criticism I had of it is actually it's not fair of the time. But having recently listened to The Enemy of My Enemy from the Time Lord Victoria series, Nicholas Briggs plays about 7 or 8 different Daleks in that audio. And every Dalek is distinct. Every Dalek has a very different voice.
Different personality.
Personality. And
I don't know how he does it.
No, it is amazing. Like, it is just...
And it's all going on in his head. I fancied myself an actor years ago, and I ended up becoming a set designer and a director because I was like, I can't memorize that gibberish. I can't hold that in my head long enough to get through a run.
Yeah, so
and he amazed me.
That performance in that audio is breathtaking. But in here, this is obviously much earlier on. And when our main Dalek meets the Supreme Dalek and they're having a conversation, I struggled to work out which Dalek was talking.
Is this before he did the TV show? So this is like 2 or 3 years before he became the official voice of the Daleks for television.
That's right. He became the voice of television because of this. So
okay.
Russell T Davies loved this episode, this story. He loved Nicholas's interpretation of the Dalek. And that's why he went to Rob and said, Rob, I want you to make this story into a TV episode. And so there's a lot of things that carry through. So you've got the Dalek has been captured. You've got the Dalek being tortured and refusing to speak. The will talk to be seen. You've got the companion who has compassion because it's being tortured and compassionate. You've got the Dalek wanting orders from Rose and getting confused in terms of what it is now, what's its role, what's its purpose. You've got the Doctor becoming the Dalek. So he's taken a lot of the elements, but...
He's taken the heart of the story, really.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the heart of it.
He did. I think he said I've met Rob and actually interviewed him, and I think he did something like 24 different drafts of that Dalek script because he did a large number of drafts the first time, and then he found out he lost the Daleks because the Terry Nation state wouldn't give the Daleks, and so then he got the Toclophane, a new monster that Russell T Davies.
Oh, is that where the Toclophane came from? Was going to be in that? I didn't know that.
That's right. So then he had to rewrite the whole script based on the Toclophane, and then they found they had the Daleks back again, and they had to redraft. So yeah, it's been worked over so many times, but you still see so much of this story in that episode. And of course, his whole aim for that episode was to make the Daleks scary. Because he actually went to his partner this time and said, what are the things that you laugh about with the Daleks? What doesn't scare you? And so things like the plunger, it's silly having a sink plunger. And so he turns the sink plunger into that thing that sucks up his face and kills him. The Dalek balls, the bubbles of the Dalek, and he turns that into a force field. So he takes everything that people thought was silly and then turns it around.
I did note that the self-destruct mechanism that was used in the TV episode the Dalek just needed orders to use that, whereas in Jubilee it had been disabled. So yeah, quite a lot of elements. But for me, once again, when you compare it to the TV episode, what I love is the dialogue, the snappy dialogue between the characters, the human characters, more than the Dalek. Although on the TV episode, when Eccleston goes into that room, that's probably one of the most powerful scenes, if not the most powerful scene from Series 1 of the new series, when Eccleston faces the Dalek for the first time. But it's not the Dalek, it's Eccleston.
Yeah, and you're talking to, and some of that he may be talking to an empty shell, because we don't need the actor in the Dalek suit if he's chained to the wall. And it's probably, it is his reaction to the Dalek. I know friends of mine that I turned on to New Who, like Vic, my podcast partner. She had no interest in watching original Who. She did when I tricked her. And she finally went through all of it. But what she liked about this was she had seen me watch Daleks and go, how are they scary? And his reaction to it made them scary. Because you saw someone's anger and fear. Because that scene, when he goes into the room, it's a post-traumatic stress disorder trigger. And you see fear and anger at the same time. He's terrified that there's one of these things still existing. He thought he was, he had ended this. And I love that scene. I like both those scenes. I like the scenes where he explains that one of these could kill everybody on this planet. Speaking
of doctors with good acting skills, we had a very different doctor in Jubilee, in The Doctor in the Tower, played by Colin Baker. What were your thoughts on him playing the legless doctor? And I don't mean he'd had a few drinks.
Oh, I love Colin Baker's Doctor. I love Colin Baker's Big Finish Doctor. It's hard for me when we review his TV stuff, because it triggers the 80s stuff. Just triggers me. It's like, this is
post-traumatic stress.
Post-traumatic. It's just, it's just terrible. Some of the sets in the 80s, the 80s were a very tacky time. And I have some post-traumatic stress when it comes to, if there are pictures of me popping up with thank God we didn't have social media in the 80s. Because there'd be pictures of me like, no. But he's such a good actor. And I've talked to Jeff, who does Runcible, work, to me, that he's got 3 different 60s that he plays for Big Finish. He's got TV era. He's got the Evelyn, where he's changing. He's got angry at Perry. Perry and him are friends. It's more than that. The era with Evelyn. And then the later years when he's been around for a while, and he's had Evelyn and Mel, and then he's been with Charlie and all these other companions.
Flip it together, great.
Oh, I know. I got to meet her. I got to meet Lisa Greenwood at Con, and she was so sweet, And I actually got her to sign my his final story, where they did that 4-disc set, which tells his regeneration story. But I love Colin Baker in this, because you get to see what a good actor he is. And I think from here on, I think they give him more to do. You know what I mean? I think the writers, I would not be surprised writers heard Jubilee and went, oh, he's got this much of range. Let's give him some range.
I think it started long before this.
Really?
I think in terms of early Big Finish, Colin Baker was served best as the Doctor.
Oh yeah,
he gets total comedies. He gets the hard stuff. He gets songs in the Pirates.
In the early years of Big Finish, he was the Doctor that you could see the biggest contrast between his TV era and the new era on audio. So, the Davison stories and the McCoy stories were, very similar to what they had on TV. But I will say, you mentioned before we came on that you were going to discuss on your podcast Trial of a Time Lord at one point, but don't overlook the first 4 episodes of that Mysterious Planet. That's where you get.
I do.
That's where you get Colin Baker probably at his best in the TV era, when the relationship between he and Perry is just
that
sensational.
walk in the woods.
Mm.
It's a beautiful scene. And me and Vic will both say that when we've watched it, if you take all the trial stuff out, the stories are better. That in the Blu-ray, I love Terror of the Vervoid because it's a pure Doctor Who story. You know? And they did these Blu-ray sets they do some really good work because that one they have new effects and they take all the trial stuff out and it's wonderful. I mean, it's still 80s and a bit cheesy, and there's some hammy acting, and those costumes are a little questionable. But
so one thing I want to finally mention on Jubilee before we move on to the next story is the main guest cast, which is the two, Martin Jarvis and Rosalind Ayres, who played husband and wife in the story, but are actually husband and wife in real life as well.
I didn't know that.
So they actually have their own theatre company. And yeah, so that was an interesting dynamic to have those two playing, I was going to say on screen, on audio, husband and wife. Maybe they could push it just that little bit further in that absurd Rob Sherman way that they needed to, more than they could with another actor, because they knew each other so well. But Martin Jarvis got a long history with Doctor Who, hasn't he? All the way back to the Web Planet.
Yes, he's one of the bumblebees. And he's the governor in Vengeance on Varos.
And in Invasion of the Dinosaurs, he plays, I can't remember the name.
The
scientist. He's like the scientist. He's like,
oh my God, that is
Peter Miles's sidekick. Yeah,
I just watched that. Been going through my nonstop rewatch, and I went from season 11 through, or season 10 through, and I've hit a wall. I've been the Graham William years of Tom Baker, which is a little hard for me. I think they're both great. I did not know they were married. She's wonderful.
Yeah, this actually part was written for them because Rob Sherman actually knew them quite well. He'd actually written a play for them. And so before he actually wrote this, he actually went to them and said, I'm writing this Doctor Who, will you be in it? And they both said yes. So he actually wrote this with their voices, with them in mind. So I think that's why part of the reason why it works so well for them.
One more person that I wanted to mention was Stephen Elder, who played Pharaoh. Now, I recognised his voice because he had a major role in Dalek Empire, one of the Dalek Empires as well. I think it was Dalek Empire 3.
Okay.
And he spent a lot of episodes. I don't know if you remember, Philip, but he spent a lot of episodes inside a spacesuit with a lot of heavy breathing acting for about 2 or 3 episodes, and it really got to me. And hearing his voice in Jubilee reminded me of that, and I remember thinking, boy, that irritated me, that performance in Dalek Empire. Wow. But it does have David Tennant in it, so we can forgive it for that. But
yeah. Me and Jeff are going to cover that on Runcible at some point. We're going to do some jumping around.
Cool.
But it's like I've only listened to Dalek Empire Volume 1. I've never listened to the rest. Yeah. And I had never listened to Cybermen, and that was his suggestion, and I was like blown away by both of them.
Cybermen's great. Yeah, they're all good. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of want to convince him to do some audio visuals and do a compare and contrast to Swords of Orion. Because I've listened to bits and pieces of audio visuals, but I kind of want to see how it translates. Because I think Swords of Orion is a really good Cyberman story.
Yeah. You should do Minuet in Hell. Because they're very different. Minuet in Hell, the Big Finish version is set in a made-up country in the present day.
Yeah, me and Vic covered it, and it really bugged me.
It's a hard one to get through, but the audio visuals Minuet in Hell, it's been a long time since I heard it, but it is actually set in the 19th century in the actual Hellfire Club back then. So it's quite different. Yeah.
It really bugs me. Some of these early Big Finish, it's like you could have done some homework. There's one where they say Benjamin Franklin was president, And then in Zagreus, one of you got it wrong. And you're explaining it with some timey-wimey excuse 4 or 5 stories later because someone called you on and said, Benjamin Franklin was never president of the United States. Not even close. And it really, we're like, Vic goes, do you think that was on purpose? I went, no. That was someone just not knowing what they were doing and not double-checking.
Yeah, no, I think it was on purpose because that whole scene had... Yes. Because there's lots of stuff like that. Because, I mean, Shakespeare doesn't exist, and there's
Time of the Daleks was all about the timey-wimey stuff.
They do lots of similar mistakes.
Yeah, we're
deliberately so.
I think our next McGann is that Dalek one. I'm not sure. We just started back over. We just recorded.
Oh, that's right. If you just did Seasons of Fear, then probably Time of the Daleks might be next.
Yeah, I love the McGann stuff. Can't get enough of it.
Very good. All right. Any final thoughts on Jubilee?
Great episode. Listen to it.
Yes, it is. I hadn't listened to it in 4 or 5 years. I used to do a re-listen because it didn't have Who, and when there were only a handful of Big Finish, I would just listen to them in order. I'd probably listened through Zagreus like 5 or 6 times. And
you can still listen to that on Spotify if you so desire. Yeah. I think the first 50 are up, and I think there's
doing
a few
big
more.
Sale right now for the first 50, $1.49.
Yeah,
first
story. Bargain. Yeah. It's a bargain even when it's not on sale. But okay, let's move on, shall we? We're going to talk about The Angel of Scutari. Here's a trailer.
Coming soon from Big Finish Productions. Doctor Who. The Angel of Scutari.
Oh, Florence, you're insufferable.
Doctor, this place doesn't know whether it's a military hospital or a sewer.
Neither, it's a barracks.
Yeah, but where?
The Crimea.
Oh, Florence Nightingale.
She was kind of the reason I started all this. Nursing. I did the school project, see, about the Crimea and the lady with the lamp.
At the distance of 1,200 yards, the whole line of the enemy belched forth. From 30 cannon mounds, a flood of smoke and flame, through which hissed the deadly balls.
Doctor, they're aiming at us!
I'm William Russell, Special Correspondent for the London Times.
And are you proud, Mr. Russell? Proud of the way the British Empire has conducted itself? How it has perpetuated this needless war?
I know who you are, sir. Right down to your jersey.
Let go of
Stop
me!
your squirming.
I can live without love. I cannot live without my work.
You're at it again! Thinking you know what's best for everyone!
I can't just stand by and watch all this suffering. If that's too involved, will sue me.
You're not her, though. The lady with the lamp.
Not a British soldier, except the dead and dying, was left in front of these bloody Muscovite guns.
Angel of Scutari, 7th Doctor, Hex, Ace. Why did you choose this one? We've moved on quite a while. This is about story 120, 122.
122, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the old school historicals, like the Hartnell era, and that Big Finish actually went back and did one. And I was playing catch up on my monthlies because I was doing the Doom Coalition. I was jumping around and catching up on McGann. And then I went back and I listened to like 4 years in a row of monthlies that I hadn't listened to. And I got to this one and it just hit me because it's just a pure historical. I mean, and it taught me something. I don't know how correctly, but it taught me something. I mean, I knew who Florence Nightingale was. I knew who Kitchen was. I had heard of William Russell, and I knew who Tolstoy was. But it was just an adventure with 3 characters I like. I like the Hex Ace 8th Doctor stories or 7th Doctor stories. And it was just a good historical. And it got the history and it got the gravitas, and it allowed, I love Hex as a character. Because Hex allowed to grow and change because he's not bound to anything like Ace is bound to certain, Ace is Ace because it was in the TV show. Their writer's hands are kind of tied about how much you can change an established character. But with Hex, since he's a Big Finish creation, they could do whatever they want. And Hex has a journey from when he's picked up to when he dies, to when he becomes Hector, to when everything is reset at the end. And this, I love this. This was the story just was so perfect in Hex's arc. and that it was a pure historical.
I find that interesting that you say it's a pure historical, because I hadn't thought about that. Because I am still am completely unfamiliar with the Crimea War. You sound like you might be a war buff to me. You might know your war history to a degree.
I grew up in America. You grew up with war movies and westerns.
So I'm not really familiar with the details of the Crimea War. I found myself going on a wiki and trying to get a few details here and there, which I thought was very interesting. It's actually quite a complex scenario. It's not just your Battle of Culloden or your Court of Nero or something like that. It's a lot more complex than that, which is interesting.
And this is like after the charge of the Light Brigade.
Yep.
Which is the one thing everybody knows for. But it's just, it's that thing about, it's another time where we get involved in that little section of the world right above Afghanistan, and it ends badly. And it always ends badly. Mm. It ended badly there. It ended badly in the Russian invasion, and my country's been fighting there for 17 years now. Mm. I mean, your country too has sent people, England. It's just ridiculous. It's a bad place to go and try to pick up. I knew enough about Crimea and that it was horrible. It was like on the level of our Civil War here in the United States, with the death and the destruction and I could almost see, listening to the interaction in the war, Hex going off about how filthy and how horrible the medicine was, and that he could pass it himself as a doctor, because he just had that much more medical knowledge. Because back then it was just, you died. If you got wounded, you died, or you lost a limb.
Yeah.
So
I got a little confused when I saw the character list, because there's a character called William Russell. So I was interested in finding out about that character. I thought, oh, William Russell, what's he doing in there? But the one of the very first war correspondents, an Irishman. So that was interesting to get to learn a bit about that character, along with Florence Nightingale. And I guess it is a pure historical. There was a few sci-fi elements in there, but they were mainly to do with the Doctor and Ace going forward in time, the TARDIS, the HADs activating, and the TARDIS looking like it was destroyed.
Historicals have always been counted as historicals, provided the only science fiction elements the TARDIS. So there's just the extra time jump that happens, which doesn't happen in most historicals. But yeah, this one in terms of the Doctor going back and then finding out his future and having to make sure his future happens correctly in the right order, so that he can then come back, because he has to complete all the tasks that have to happen. He found out in the future, in the past, which why I went back there. Just in terms of Crimea, because I remember studying the Crimean War, and of course it's the first modern war that happened in terms of artillery, sieges. Yeah. I mean, it still is the Charles Light Brigade, but this will be the last time, really, one of the last times that horses would be used in battle. They'd try and use them in the First World War, and of course, with the invention of the machine gun that was about to happen, horses don't work too well against machine guns.
The Poles sent some cavalry at the Nazis, which...
Yeah. Oh, did they? Well, yeah, that wouldn't have lasted well either. People always won war behind the techniques. And of course, the thing about the Crimea, that hundreds of thousands, I think 200,000 died all up, but 2 out of every 3 died of infection or disease, rather actually the battles. And it's something as, Pasteur was yet to work out about bacteria. So that his discovery of bacteria was going to be about 2 decades later. But at this stage, no one even thought about washing hands. It just didn't occur to people that you'd wash hands or infection could come badly through drains. And so Florence Nightingale, who's the modern nurse, the first of the modern nurses, who actually thought hygiene mattered, was quite revolutionary. And she, they think she saved. I think they were talking about the fact that when she arrived at the hospital, within a month, the death rate had gone from 96% down to 4%. Just the infection control and things. So yeah, pretty amazing time in history, but very black. And of course, once again, this is the background to the First World War still happening. You've got the French and the English fighting on the same side, But of course, their whole control is to stop the Russians from actually getting a port that's always doesn't freeze up. Because the whole push for Russia is they're late entrants onto the European stage. They want to be able to have a navy that actually works, and of course the navy in the North Sea, the ports all freeze up every winter, useless. And so as the whole Turkish Empire is collapsing, the Ottoman Empire, Russia says, "Hey, here we go. Let's take a bit of the Balkans. Let's take a bit of this area. Let's get our ports in dry land." And England and France really are just being awful in trying to stop. Well, I mean, really, in terms of I guess we're Australians, so we're on the English side, but in terms of the English and French really had no right to control the Russians like that, and just try and stop them becoming a force to reckon with. Though, of course, in 50 years' time, they'll need them in the First World War against the Germans.
Oh yeah,
and the second.
Yeah. There is this thing about that part of the world where, and this is Europeans and then Americans too, because we get involved in it. We get sucked into it when we become more of a world power during World War I. Is we really want to kind of dictate to the world in that area what to do. We know better. Listen to us.
You sell arms to both sides first to make unbelievable profits. Then you join them on a side once you work out who's going to win.
And you find out who's got the natural resources you want.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, the reason why America became sorry, American listeners out there, but my reading history is the reason why America became such a huge power really is because they made so much money out of the wars before they actually joined the side. And really, both wars they were forced into it. With the bombing of the Lusitania in the First World War and the bombing of Pearl Harbor in the Second. I think if you could have stayed out, you may have done a bit longer.
Nah, it wouldn't have been good for us. One, having had ancestors who fought in both of those wars, one grandparent who fought in both. Overall, World War I, why we got pulled into that, I don't know, but World War II is different because that's people go, well, you grew up around military, or they're good wars. Because in my lifetime, I don't think we've fought a good war. World War II, Nazis, fascism, knock the hell out. I get that. But this one, going back to the story, is it shows with Kitchen that how bad this war is, because he's lost it by this point, and that what this war does to the soldier, because he is so damaged by his experience, he's going to do anything he can. That's the thing. I didn't know his history that well. I know who he was. They've made movies about him.
Okay.
Charlton Heston played him in one, Khartoum. I think it's the battle where he finally dies. I just like this one because of the setting and how it has an effect on the main characters. It has an effect on them. Hex. I love to see a companion actually do what their job is, because in TV, who's like Mel's a computer programmer who never touches a computer. Perry's a botanist who sees like 2 plants. Sarah Jane Smith, she's a journalist, and they use that maybe twice in 4 years. To where you have a character who you get to see why they're a nurse. And I love Hex as a character. How are you guys? The McCoy, Ace, Hex era of Big Finish, I enjoy a great deal. I think it gets a little confusing at the end.
Yeah, I've only listened to the ending once, so I still get quite confused about when he became Hector and all that stuff. I need to go back and re-listen to that, which is...
And I went and looked. White TARDIS, Black TARDIS too, which also is.
It is. It is. It starts
confusing.
Here.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But we have to wait for 13 months before Project Destiny comes out, where they go into that a little bit more. So the history of Hex is quite stagnated throughout all the other monthly range, which is very interesting. I'd had a close look at. Because now when you go to the website, Big Finish has sorted it into collections for different Doctors. So you can collect all the 7th Doctor Ace and all Hex stories pretty much together. And which is probably what we're going to start seeing when the monthlies finish next year. We might see box sets or bundles of those particular eras come out, and Big Finish promotes them that way, because I think it would probably be a much easier way to digest them rather than wait 13 months for this one and then another 2 years for this continuing story, because between this TARDIS team, you had the Seventh Doctor on his own for some stories, then you had Klein, that was another story arc, so Klein was with the Seventh Doctor for a while, then you had some Mel stories, and so, yeah, it was a little bit tricky to follow. But I think they might bundle them all together. That's what I'm suggesting might happen.
Well, they've done those two, what I'm calling test drives of the new format. They had a Sixth Doctor and a Fifth Doctor box set, right? It's like in what the Colin Baker Perry thing is supposed to be is like a test drive of the new way they're going to publish these stories.
Actually, interesting, because we're talking to the producer of that, and he actually said that was actually put together for the 20th anniversary of Big Finish. It just got delayed. And so, because I thought, to me, it looked like it was a test run, and I thought it was fantastic. 1 hour stories, fast paced, variety in there. I thought, this is the perfect test run of what they're going to do. But yeah, having a chat with the producer of it, he was saying, no, they actually produced it for the 20th, and it was just late.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, I like when Big Finish first came out, I loved, oh, look, they're in 4 episodes. It's just like, but you're listening to them in one go, So sometimes, it's like, Vic had brought it up, but she never watched Old Who in episode form. Like we never, and I never, as a kid, never saw. When I first started watching Doctor Who, we had 4 years of Tom Baker, and that was it. And we were getting it out of Baltimore, and that was episodic every day. But when the DC PBS station got it, they showed them in movie format only. Every Saturday night at 11 o'clock, you got a Doctor Who movie. And they just showed them in a loop for 20 years. So some of these, until they came out on DVD, I'd never seen them in episodic form. So I kind of like the Big Finish in episodic form, but I think it's something, do it now and then, but, tighten up I like their 45-minute to 50-minute stories are really tightly packed. And I'd like to say, and I think it's probably a good idea.
They did an interesting thing, speaking of the TV series, and making omnibuses and things like that, in the mid to late 80s, when I started recording the episodes off TV onto my beta cassettes. The ABC they'd been forever showing them nightly, 6 o'clock at night. Then around the time of Trial of a Time Lord, I don't know if you remember, Philip, they started showing them on Saturday afternoons. I think it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, 2 episodes at a time. So they joined them together. But interestingly, season 22, for the episodes that were supposed to be 45 minutes, the ABC cut them in half and put cliffhangers on where there wasn't supposed to be cliffhangers.
Well, there weren't cliffhangers, but yes.
Yeah, just cut the show off.
Wasn't there a different... I'm thinking of one... I thought they went back and re-edited some of those to be rented as... I think the BBC did that edit because people wanted the 30 minutes. Countries that were buying it, that might have been...
No, it's just Colin Baker's 22nd season. It was purely the ABC that did it.
Oh,
and they just went 25 minutes, and then it doesn't matter what happened, they just slam the titles in. And sometimes it could be under the most stupid line, like nothing at all. And then for the second episode, because the episode was too short, then you'd have 3 or 4 minutes of backstory again, bringing to the point where they put it in. So it was just hideous cuts.
Oh my God! In the omnibuses we got in Northern Virginia, there are chunks of War Games is a good thing where there is a little repeat, but they're filmed different. They refilm a scene from a different angle. There's little bits, so you'll see the same scene back to back, just slightly different, and you're like,
yep.
because they just cut off the credits and tacked it together. They didn't think to go, does this match? And it's like, what the hell happened?
Well,
and that one's cut in two.
Yeah, often, I mean, with the first 6 seasons, often they just refilm the cliffhanger again. And so that's why they often doesn't match with the first and second, particularly the first Doctor. Often the cliffhanger looks quite different. And if you wouldn't matter if it was a week apart, but when you just watch the cliffhanger and then you go back and they refilm it, sometimes a line's been fluffed or something's happened there just to throw some variety, which is good.
I know when I rewatch them, sometimes I'll fast forward through, I'll skip the credits, but I'll fast forward through the first 2 or 3 minutes because I already know it's happened.
Hmm.
I don't know what you've done to us, Ross, but we've just taken a Gallifrey's Most Wanted tangent.
Oh, sorry. It's me. I'm the king of the tangents. Yeah, me and Vic and Jeff had one, and I had to cut 30 minutes out of an episode in the middle. And I sent him a message. This would be way too long. I'm cutting this one out. It is the least Doctor Who tangent, so it's getting edited.
So back to the Angel of Scutari, and surrounding that story were, as I said, it goes on 13 months later to Project Destiny, which the Project and the Forge stories in Big Finish have a big part to play in the Hex story, which you don't actually necessarily know at first, but it turns out that the Forge.
When do they finally reveal he's the child of the woman who's the main protagonist?
I think you know. I think you do know by the end of the Harvest. Is it? I think it's in the Harvest where there's a little mention.
It is in the Harvest. It's dropped there, but you can easily miss it.
So it's a little drop. But it doesn't get expanded until way down the track. But before that, there was a story called Enemy of the Daleks. So apparently
I love that one.
That's why Hex was dropped in that situation. Because is that the story? Is that the Seventh Doctor thought, oh, Hex is going to need a rest, so let's drop him in the middle of a war and he'll feel better?
Yeah, that it actually says that when you look it up in Fandom Wiki or something. I looked up some stuff and I went, they sent him to a post to get over the battle with the Daleks on the planet Bliss. I'm like, this is not. Why don't you take him to Disneyland or something? Mallorca.
So do you recall that story? What actually happened to Hex on Bliss?
I don't remember. I've not had a chance to do a lot of re-listening on things. I have to kind of go back and refresh my memory.
Was the Enemy of the Daleks the one where there was that really scary monster that would eat the Daleks? Was that the one? I'm not sure. I prefer Big Finish Dalek stories than a lot of TV Dalek stories, so I wish I remembered them a little better. And this one is just, the reason I remember this one so well is because it's stuck in my head. This was the most impactful of all the Hex stories to me. Does that make sense? It's the one that is just that I will always remember and go back to. I do want to go back and kind of listen to all the Forge stuff one day and just kind of listen to this whole arc. Yeah.
Because that's with Big Finish re-listening, it's kind of, I have to pick something to go back. Because I'm like a year and a half behind. Because they just pump out stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always surprised by what's good and there's things that I've bought and I'm just doing it to be a completist and I love it. I'm like, wow, okay, I thought I was going to hate this.
Okay, with any historical, throw in a good, well-known historical actor. This is the one and only appearance of Hugh Bonneville in a Big Finish story. So, of course, Hugh Bonneville's famous from Downton Abbey, but he also was the pirate captain in Curse of the Black Spot.
Mm-hmm.
And A Good Man Goes to War is back in that, wasn't he?
Oh, very briefly.
Yeah.
Filmed at the same time as the Black Spot, so.
Yeah, they went. Every guest star had to make an appearance in that one, so they were just filming.
Don't ruin the magic.
Oh, sorry.
So yeah, he's playing two roles, playing an Englishman and the Tsar. So, what were your thoughts on Hugh's performance?
I'd be honest, I listened to it and then I went and did my research in the Big Finish companion book and I didn't realize it was him, which is a good thing as an actor. I liked him. I mean, I liked the characters and the performances were good, and he's a very good actor. But I didn't know it was him, which I find that's always a good thing sometimes when I'm listening to an audio and I enjoy performance and then I look and see it. Wow, it's, you know, because I get to pick what they look like. You know what I mean? Because it's audio. All the visual stuff is going on in my head. And I like an actor who's a chameleon. And I wish in America we had a tradition of audio plays, which we don't anymore, not since the end of radio.
Yeah.
It just stopped.
He's a big star now and really big. I mean, he did a lot of stuff before Downton, but Downton's really what drew him to the world's attention. So
this is long before that, isn't it?
This is long before that. So I think this is still, it's certainly not it's not like in Jubilee where you actually have 2-star roles with 2-star actors. Neither role that he was playing in this are star roles. He's just a jobbing actor. In fact, and there's other actors doing carrying a bigger load, doing a better parts than he is. He's good, he's solid, but then the whole cast is solid.
Yeah,
it was just one of those names that stood out to me on the cast list next to William Russell.
Yeah, it's like when David Tennant suddenly appears and stuff, you go, oh wow! But of course, back before Doctor Who, he was just a jobbing actor who wanted to work
and was friends with all these guys. This is weird clique. You hear stories about that they all knew each other at the beginning of Who. Yeah. And I'm a huge Gatiss, Mark Gatiss fan. I do like him as an actor a great deal. Over here on YouTube, they showed his Corleones where he won his Olivier.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now I know why you're on stage a lot. You're a great stage actor. And then, I mean, because it's a different skill set.
Yes, it's very much so.
I hate seeing a big movie star on stage sometimes because they look like a lost child in the supermarket. Just wandering around confused.
People can go from the stage to film far easier than the other way around. And that's why the big Broadway stars end up in all sorts of TV shows and all sorts of movies and can carry it off usually. But it's very hard to go the other way.
So just a final thought on Angel of Scutari. Philip, do you like pure historical stories?
I do. I have always liked them.
So why don't we get more of them? Why there hasn't been one on TV since Black Orchid?
No, I think they're afraid of them. I mean, I think it's a fear thing that the audience, especially nowadays, where every little tweak or change you put in a show causes these horrible reactions. Horrible. I'm like on our podcast Twitter feed, I'm very careful of what I post. And I block immediately a lot of very aggressive, someone who's not disagreeing, but someone who's just being aggressive. My opinion's the right opinion. You must listen to me and agree with me. And I think it's a fear. I think it's a fear. That's not what they want. They want science fiction. It's a time they've traveled back in time. You have
the
time.
The three of us really love pure historicals. Surely we're not alone in that.
There was a lie. There was a lie that I think it was Innes Lloyd came up with after the Highlanders that historicals don't rate. Now, if you actually go back and look at the ratings, it's a lie, because when you actually go back and look at the historicals, they rate just as well, sometimes better than the sci-fi. It was just that. It was just the production cast got lazy and just didn't want to do historicals.
Well, I mean, here's my thing is, what are the two stories that are missing that most people want to really see? Or at least for me, is Marco Polo and the Massacre. I would love for them to find Marco Polo. I love the Massacre. I think the Massacre is an incredibly well-written script, and it allows Peter Purves and William Hartnell to just work. Do what they're good at. I mean, because both of their performances are great in it.
My wish list would be The Mythmakers, because I love the historical comedy as well. I thought The Romans was sensational, and The Mythmakers is very similar, and I think that would be just absolutely terrific to see that. But my point is, even after Angel of Scutari, can you think of any big finish episodes that are purely historical?
Peterloo, the Peter Davison one about the.
Oh yeah, that's recent.
There's no science fiction, and I did not know about that. That is something I know that there's a film about it a couple years ago for the anniversary of it, and I think Big Finish decided this is a huge event. It's the anniversary. I think they picked it because it was the anniversary of it.
So is that three? Is that three we can think of? You got this one, the Murrin Conspiracy, and the Peterloo Massacre. Is that it?
Yeah, off the top of my head. And I don't know why they don't do. I mean, you could do so much. You just.
I think you got Farewell Great Macedon is probably another one as well. It's not a full cast though, but it's.
Yeah, that's a rough one though. That's a rough one.
It's hard work to get through that.
Oh my God, I'm not a fan of the 6 and 7 parters, but that felt like. Yeah, that was a bear. That was I liked it in the end. I have kind of at the end. I went, okay, it paid off, but it took a while. It took a while. No, I don't know why they don't do it, because you could do so many things. You know, just witnessing the event. And I don't think in the TV show you need to insert science fiction into the stories. I think
you see, the Witchfinders, for instance, was a good story until the aliens came in. They could have done that as a pure historical.
Oh yeah, I think with Rosa, they get the point of Rosa Parks, and the importance.
That didn't need any science fiction at all, but they had to insert this.
No.
Well, you had to have a reason. You had to have a reason to make sure it happens, and I kind of get that. What you have to have that scene where they are on the bus and they go, okay, we've got her on the bus, we can leave. And the doctor goes, no, if we leave, she doesn't have to move. We have to sit here and watch this happen. And I get why that's there, because I think Graham's reaction is and it's a simple line. I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I do not want to be here. And it's really heartfelt. But you really... No, you don't need the science fiction.
And you actually have. I mean, the problem with that one, you have a companion kill a character with a gun.
Well, he sent him back in time.
To where there's dinosaurs, there's no other people. He's dead.
Well, he
can't survive.
We could find. They could write him into a Silurian episode.
Maybe he can. Maybe he can have a camp. Sit around the campfire with Grover and Whitaker from Invasion of the Dinosaurs.
Yeah, he's dead. That never should be allowed to happen.
Yeah. Well, I kind of thought the same thing. It's that thing about the doctor can't kill, but everybody else can.
Yeah, the doctor makes warriors of everyone else.
But even still, they still could have made, if they thought about it, they've got talent, these writers. If they thought about it, they could have left the sci-fi elements out and made it pure historical.
And what was the Tesla? Well, I didn't mind the Tesla Edison one, because you had to put them in the same room, and they didn't they would never in real life been in the same room.
Well, I think the title of that episode was an actual newspaper headline, wasn't it? So I think the story was written around that headline.
Oh, okay.
Is that right?
I don't know much about Tesla. I mean, I'm coming to him as someone who's a history buff later in life, because as we start reevaluating him, as we do with history. We look back and go, oh, wait a minute, he was right. He was crazy and eccentric, but he had some right ideas. And someone on Twitter the other day was like, well, I'm watching this for the first time, and was Edison like blah, blah. They were kind of going, they're making stuff up about Edison, and someone goes, oh, no. And Edison didn't invent much. He hired people to invent things for him.
Lots of patents.
He wanted the patents because that's the money. He wasn't a very nice man. It's like, people who, in America, we look back.
Well, it's Henry Ford did the same thing with the V8 engine.
Oh, yeah. And he was a horrible, horrible anti-Semite. He published an anti-Semitic
Ford was.
Oh, yeah. He was awful. He wrote a paper that he had his own newspaper that would be in dealerships.
I'm glad I drive Holdens then.
But no, he was a terrible person in a lot of ways. The Rockefellers, until the ones that were till the generation of Nelson, like 3 generations down, were pretty horrible people. Nelson Rockefeller was our vice president for a little bit. And
whenever I hear Rockefeller, I just think of that tower that you can see from
That was Grandpa's. Yeah, that's
I've been
Grandpa's building.
I've been up there a couple of times, so it's a good trip up that tower.
I only went up the Empire State. I only looked at Rockefeller. I didn't.
Yeah, I go to Brooklyn, and I end up like Coney Island or just like pizza shops and food. I just eat too much when I go. My dad was from Brooklyn. I have friends that live in Brooklyn. And it's all about the food.
I think my favorite view of New York is from the Rockefeller, because that way you have the Empire State behind you. You've got Grand Central Park in front of you. Yeah, beautiful views from up there.
I can't wait until we can travel again, because I do want to go back up there.
Yes, I know. I'm supposed to be flying to New Zealand tomorrow, but I'm not. Never mind.
Aren't you allowed to go in there yet?
No. New Zealand won't accept anyone.
They haven't opened up yet.
No, New Zealanders can fly here to New South Wales, but anyone who goes back to there has to go into lockdown for 2 weeks. Yeah.
I was supposed to go to Gallfrey 1 Con this year, or this February coming up.
Yeah.
And they've already they didn't cancel it. They did something that I think is amazing. So they took everybody's tickets and pushed them back to 2022. I had my ticket for that year, and the hotel is honoring our reservations.
Were they sold out?
I don't think they were, because there was some pre-COVID panic when the tickets went on sale. I had never been, and my wife was like, yes, we'll spend the money. This is important. Because we used to have a con up in Maryland that I would go to, and it went belly up. And I miss it.
I went to San Francisco in February to see a band I like.
Oh, God.
Saw them
How was
play.
San Francisco?
Fantastic. I was in San Francisco on Valentine's Day. That was the night of the gig. So I was surprised because COVID had just started. It was on the news a little bit, and I was thinking, there's not many people wearing masks at the airports. So I thought that's unusual. And then, a couple of weeks after I got back home, it all just blew up from there. So I just made it, because I drove up to Sacramento as well and spent some time in this Indian casino up there, Indian Reservation Casino up in Sacramento.
That's how the Indians are getting back at us. Good for them. Take the man's money.
That's it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. My mom's dad's family is from up in Northern California, and I was born in Oakland, California.
Oh, right. Okay.
I don't remember it. We lived there when I was little.
I love it.
It is. I went years ago with an ex-girlfriend. We went to San Francisco. I like San Francisco. It smells a little like pee. There's a lot of pee smell, I noticed.
I think when I was walking through Chinatown, there was like helicopters and spotlights everywhere. I think they were filming Matrix 4. Keanu Reeves was around. They were filming Matrix 4.
Okay. I know he's in Berlin doing it now.
Okay. Yep.
Because they're trying to make part of Berlin look like New York. I went, okay.
All right, let's get back. And so any final thoughts on Angel of Scutari before we move on?
People listen to it. It's a fun one. It is action-packed, too. I mean, it's deep, and it's got some stuff going on. It's a lot of fun. And I think that's why it's stuck in my head, because I finished listening to it, and I was like, okay, that came out of nowhere. I wasn't ready for a pure historical, and it was just a really well-told story.
Cool.
For me, I guess the historicals have always made me interested in history. I think I've got a passion for history because of Doctor Who. It's always made me look up and research, and this made me do some research, which was good, and just to remember some of the stuff I'd learned. I think the thing that struck me too is that the first 100 or so big finishes I've heard lots and lots of times. Back before there was a lot of material out, I'd re-listen. And so in my head, I've got this view that the first 100 or so big finishes are the classic times, and that the stuff, you're getting old, the stuff after that wasn't as good. But going back, I'm not sure I'd listened to this a second time since it came out. And going back and listening to this again, it is brilliant. So it's made me realize I actually need to get back into a lot more and re-listen to stuff.
The longer we do this podcast, Philip, the more I realize how much I've missed, because I kind of skimmed over the second 100, When they kind of rebranded a little bit and started at 200, kind of they changed the direction slightly, but that period between 1 and 200, yeah, you're right. It's pretty good stuff, most of it there.
So I'm enjoying dipping more and more, and this is just made me want to listen to more episodes. And
you can do that.
I know. I do remember when a year after this, we got to Hex being shot and not having any clue because I couldn't remember that it ended with him being shot because it's so far away. So, but yeah, it's a brilliant episode. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent. All right, let's go to recommendations. Normally, we like to get a recommendation from our guests, Ross, on something that you've been listening to. Doesn't have to be Doctor Who related. Can be. I know you've been listening to Cyberman, but is there anything else that you would recommend to our listeners to grab hold of?
I have one. It's one of those ones. I'm trying to find the name of it. Hold on a second. I find sometimes, because I get every story, I'm going to get to one where I'm not going to really like it. I am not a big Rose fan at all. I think she's a mean girl. But the Dimension canon set absolutely surprised the heck out of me.
It's good, isn't it?
I love the character of Clive. I love that actor. I'm not going to blank on his name right now, but there is that first episode where they're jumping from dimension to dimension, and they're in the one where the sun's going out, and they're with that Jackie and that Pete, and it's so good. The minute I finished the set, I texted Vic, my podcast partner, and went, I cannot believe how good this was. Because I think there's one episode in it that I didn't like as much, but overall it was so good. And she's very good in it. And the guest cast is incredible. Because I don't really care for Pete. I like Jackie, kind of, but because you get to see all the different dimensions and the different worlds, the different way history went as she jumps from dimension to dimension. And it was a little deeper than I thought it was going to be.
A bit bleak at times.
Yeah, but I don't know if I could listen to it now during COVID. I've been guesting on another podcast, Strangers in Space, and we're doing a lot of dystopian movies. And it's kind of like we did Soylent Green and a few others. It's just like, I don't know if I can do many more of these end of the world movies right now.
I've got to say, I think I enjoyed Rose as a character more in the Dimension canon than I did in her last appearance in the TV series.
I did too.
In the Stolen Earth, she kind of, she improved. She improved with age. Put it that way.
Taking her out of she's chasing the Doctor, the lovelorn, but that she's just an adventure on her own. And Billie Piper is an incredibly good actress. I mean, she's an incredibly good actress. And it just let her stretch and let her be Rose, but be Rose on her own. And bringing in Clive, I thought was giving her a sidekick was a good choice.
Yeah. Okay, Philip, what about you?
Well, you may have actually recommended this because I started listening to this a couple of weeks ago. We had John Dorney on, and he talked about
those episodes.
Oh, good. He talked about a podcast he does called the Best Pick Movie Podcast, which he's working his way all through the Academy Awards. And I've listened to about 10 or 15 episodes in the last week of that because they are just so entertaining. I guess I assumed it was just going to be chatting about the movie, and that would be it. But before they even get to the movie, there's this discussion on what's happening in the year. It's about the politics of the Academy, who's lived, who's died, who's around the scene. There's just so much discussion. Once again, it's the history that I love. Actually, I picked the whole noughties, and so I've just been playing all of them in order. So, because they're just randomly picking out numbers, but I thought I'd just go to do all the films of 15, 20 years ago. It's been amazing that the way they analyze the films is great, and they're so entertaining with us. So, yeah. I'm glad I discovered this one. I'm discovering lots of podcasts at the moment. People give me all these suggestions and getting me hooked. What about you, Dwayne? What have you been listening to?
Well, I'm going to recommend some music, but I'm going to go out with a piece from this particular artist. So I'm going to say goodbye to you all first before I start talking about it. So I just want to thank Ross for coming on. I think this is we're in our 30s somewhere, 30-something episodes, and you're the first guest that we've had from the States. So thank you for breaking our United States virginity.
You're welcome. I love we've not had any guests. It's more Jeff, and now he's joined the podcast. But I have some some guest envy. You get some great guests. When you got Nick Briggs, because Nick Briggs is like my nerd hero. Somebody turned his nerd passion into his work. I envy him. When we were at the first con me and Vic went together, I went, that's him. And Nick Briggs walked by, and Vic just turned to me and goes, "You're going to fangirl over an old white guy in a goatee." I was like,
yes.
Yeah, well,
and the answer is yes.
yes,
I would too.
I would too. Got a picture of me and Jason Hagegel. I didn't want to do the picture with the stars at my first con, but I did get a picture taken with me with Nick Briggs and Jason Hagegel.
I had to say to him, Nick, we just, it's envy, yes, but it's just because we want to be you. We would love to be in your shoes.
Oh my God.
And be able to do what you're doing, particularly. He never has to grow up ever. That's fantastic.
No, and
he can go to his grave as a 5-year-old boy.
And he's so good at it. I mean,
yep.
And me and Jeff were talking recently about he's been in charge all but like the first 4 years.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was still quite involved then, but he was doing a lot of his spin-offs. So his Dalek Empire took up a lot of his time in the first couple of years.
I think he's a great artistic director. In theater, we call it an artistic director. He does a very good job.
And we didn't mention Jubilee. He directed it. He did the soundscape. He did the music.
And Rob Sherman's credited as a director too. Did you notice that?
Rod directed all the scenes when Nick was being the Dalek. So Nick would go in the booth and Rob would direct that, and then all the other scenes is what Nick directed. But yeah, so I mean, once again, he's so talented, makes you want to vomit.
So Ross, thank you for coming on. I hope you can come on again with us sometime. That'd be awesome.
Oh, I would love to.
And Philip, thanks for coming. Bye.
Bye.
Bye all.
I'm going to recommend, I mentioned him earlier, but for some reason, hearing Rob Sherman's words and ridiculous words, and also hearing Frank Zappa's ridiculous words make me think of him. In the last month, I think it's a 6 CD release has been released of Frank Zappa's 1981 performance at the Palladium, which has previously been available, some of it, on DVD. But the whole thing, all 3 shows are available on CD now, released in October. I think it's called Halloween 81. But there's one song from that in particular that I'm going to go out on because it reminds me so much of Rob Sherman and his absurd writing. So I'm going to go out on that. This is Frank Zappa and The Torture Never Stops.